And we're back with more News Talk Saga 960, the Mark Petrone Show. We're also streaming this live on a number of different platforms. And the talk is all about Netflix these days, specifically after the market close. Wow, the stock just plunged, took a huge dip. Yeah, there's all sorts of panic here as Netflix subscribers fall for the first time in 10 years. And they lost about 200,000 subscribers. I mean, they got millions of subscribers, but the point is that for the first time in 10 years, they are starting to lose people, bailing on the platform. So what's going on here? Is it Putin's fault? Everything else is Putin's fault. Why not this? Well, yeah, they're in part blaming Russia because of an end to service to people in that country over Ukraine. But is there more to it? Well, let's bring in our media expert, Daniel Boardman, who, of course, is a well-known journalist with the National Telegraph. Maybe he's got some thoughts about what's going on with Netflix. I ask the question, I would ask it to you, Daniel. Did it go too woke? Did it go too far towards too much woke content, and therefore it's finding that maybe people are bailing out? Or is there something else going on here? What do you think?
Yeah, I actually had three possible reasons for why they would lose. You just gave me a fourth. So obviously, number one is Putin. Putin went around. They were Slava Ukraine all the way, and Putin got to them. So that's number one. The other ones I identified is, well, possibly it's oversaturation of the market. So now everyone has their own streaming platform. It's a new way to go. So whereas Netflix was dominant in the field and destroyed Blockbuster, well, now Disney Plus started up. It took all the Marvel content and Star Wars content off of Netflix, so people might go there. Amazon Prime has really invested in streaming. So there's just Paramount, and everyone has a streaming platform now. So oversaturation of the market is one possibility. Two, you hit on it. There is woke content is overly woke. So Netflix now needs to rely on original content, and some of their original content is quite good and people like it, but a lot of their original content is woke nonsense. And the problem with woke nonsense is it not only doesn't appeal to half the country, it actively drives it away. So when Netflix has a how many $1 million deal with the Obamas to produce content, well, there's half the country that doesn't want to hear what Michelle Obama has to say about the world. And it's one thing to make a documentary on a former president. It's another thing to give the Obamas freedom to do whatever they want. And you want some Netflix original content. Like, it's one of my guilty pleasures is to watch hyper woke Netflix shows. Like the Colin Kaepernick show is one of the greatest TV shows ever aired. It's hilarious. It's meant to be serious. It's not. It totally vilifies his own parents. It's hysterical. But again, if you're not like me who can just laugh at this stuff, you're going to be turned off. And then the final one is, and this one is less so, but you see companies like the Daily Wire have now started to get into the market of producing conservative content. And a lot of people are saying, okay, I'm dropping Netflix now that there is some sort of quasi-viable alternative. As the Daily Wire has put out, I don't know, half a dozen movies now and is starting to produce more content. And then, of course, Russia. But I think it's primarily overly woke nonsense, which drives people away, and saturation of the market, where you have all these different streaming platforms instead of two, maybe three. It's everyone has a streaming platform. Netflix then needs to pay a lot more for non-original content, and it's expensive to create your own original content, and some of that original content is expensive woke garbage.
Well, I really like Better Call Saul. I've started binge watching. I've just gone through season number 5. But by and large, when I go on Netflix, because I do subscribe to it, I didn't subscribe for a long time because, like you, I got ticked off when they brought in the Obamas in, because I knew that they were going to go in the direction of more left wing. They were going to get all preachy, which of course they did. They'll even take an action series like The Punisher and wreck it by going woke. I actually liked the first season of The Punisher. I thought it was pretty good. If you want some escapism, your basic 1,000 kill show. And then all of a sudden, season 2 comes along and they start preaching to people and get all woke. And guess what? The season died. So I'm just trying to get a handle here on what's going on and why. They're blaming increased competition. There's been competition for years, But now I guess the company says, well, now there's so much of it. I guess Amazon Prime really is the series. I mean, is the service that I think is eating into Netflix probably the most, and they get to do their, they provide other services when you're on Amazon with the delivery services and all that. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Maybe people are feeling the pinch financially speaking. If the economy gets a little tougher, people are finding it harder to make ends meet. We saw that poll, that story just this week that reports that 31% of Canadians, Daniel, are having trouble making ends meet. $200 away from insolvency for many Canadian families. That's pretty grim. And so if you got to look around and something's got to go, well, maybe Netflix is something that's considered a luxury for some families. A lot of families, well, got to get rid of it. The other thing is that they're blaming increased competition, the password sharing. I think they were saying somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 million people, Daniel, are sharing their password with somebody else. So you got a lot of free riders out there. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. My grandma has a Netflix account. She barely uses it, so I do. I mean, there you go. Yeah, that's how most people I know have Netflix. Who pays for a Netflix account?
Yeah, well, I don't know. So what are they going to say? They're going to come after guys like you. Netflix says, well, you're the problem. So, are you concerned here that somehow they're going to hunt you down? To come after
Listen,
you?
I got bigger people trying to track me down anyway. If the Netflix police come and take away my Netflix, who cares? And again, that's the problem. It's like, okay, yeah, I'll write off someone else's password, but it's not like, it's not like Netflix is putting out such great content that it's, you need to watch, there's an hour worth of super content every night, right? If I want, I could just turn on MSNBC or some far left YouTuber to get a Netflix story, right? It's, racism bad, there are 80,000 genders, and, people who look like Mark Petroni are the bad guy. That's 75% of Netflix original content. Okay.
But it was way off, though. I mean, Netflix previously told shareholders that expected to add 2.5 million net subscribers during the first quarter. Analysts had predicted that number would be closer to 2.7 million. And during the same period a year ago, guess what? Netflix added almost 4 million paid users. We were in the midst of a lot of lockdowns during that time. So people got bored. Figured I got to do something. And instead, they end up losing 200,000. So I guess the big question I would pose to you is Netflix a dying service? What's going on? I mean, is it over for Netflix? Is it downhill for the rest of the way here for them?
I don't think so. I think this is maybe just like things coming out of the pandemic and they can survive. But, streaming is the new future of television, right? I do think the more antiquated form, like, again, who watches a sitcom on CBS anymore? Like, you'd have to be an absolute psychopath or 95 years old like my grandmother to like not have some sort of streaming service. So I do think that, is it over for the streaming services? No. But there will have to be some sort of course correction and adjustment. Now, so I think some streaming services might, not make it. Like if Paramount Plus fails, it didn't take a genius to CNN Plus would fail. But you'll probably have a few more streaming services die out. Their better content could go on to Netflix or whatever. But Netflix might die, but then it becomes Amazon Prime or whatever. So I still think you'll see, 2 or 3 dominant streaming services going into the future, because that's going to be the way people are going to want to view television now. Like no one's going to want to watch commercials halfway through the thing anymore. It's just not what we're going to do. Like, the new How I Met Your Mother comes out at 8 p.m. on a Tuesday. Make sure you clear your schedule for then. Like that's gone. That's gone the way of the dinosaurs. So this is the new way we watch. And I think it will be sort of a matter of, can Netflix realize that we have to stop lecturing people and adding sort of modern social justice narratives into our content and just tell good stories? Because you look at most like pretty good stories, it's somewhat adapted material from books or other means that they don't really screw with that much, and it really succeeds. And like one of the most, this is a streaming show, but I mean, like the Expanse started on sci-fi actually, and then was adapted by Amazon Prime. But you see, stories that sort of avoid, woke nonsense, but still tell stories that can involve race and have female characters do fine. It's just woke narrative is not good to watch because you understand where the story is going. When people start spouting their politics and you go, okay, this person's group characteristics are A, B, and C, and their politics are X, Y, and Z. So they're going to be a good guy. This guy is a white guy, and he seems to say something about free markets. Okay, there's going to be a twist later in the season that he's really evil. There is. So it's just not good storytelling when you go along these lines. And even woke people, they might love the show because it puts out the message, but they're not entertained by it. And entertainment needs to be entertaining to survive is one of the cardinal rules of art. So
all right, well, what about speaking of woke and speaking of lecturing, what about this idea? And Disney, I guess, is one of the stocks that's also down following this release of terrible results for Netflix. I mean, I have no doubt that people have been bailing out on Disney. I mean, there's talk that Tinkerbell now, maybe not appropriate anymore. Captain Hook, we making fun of disabled people here. I mean, at what point are people going to say, no, I've had enough, I'm out of here? Or is that already happening?
I think especially with Disney, it's already started to happen. I mean, Disney got involved in this whole Florida Don't Say Gay bill, which prevents teachers from talking about gender identity stuff from in kindergarten up to grade 3. So, I would push it all the way to middle school. But so Disney went in fully full on woke social justice, teaching gender identity and sexuality to children. And then they got caught in their meetings, a woke thing of trying to push not as in their terms, a not so secret gay agenda. So Disney's kind of been caught with their pants down, going full on hyper woke and attacking Ron DeSantis for a very popular bill, the bill that the left tried to deem the Don't Say Gay bill. When the components of it are explained to Democratic voters, the majority of them support it. So this is one of those things where there still is a reasonable left wing out there. They don't really exist in Twitter, but they exist in the real world. And people in the real world are the ones who pay for things like Disney Plus or Netflix subscriptions. So when you attack real people and their ideas with things like, we're going to teach your 5-year-old about the gender unicorn, it turns a lot of people off. And there've been enough, things where it's like, okay, boycott Disney. And you see Disney will thank the province of the Xinjiang province, which is currently committing a genocide against the Uyghur population, for helping them film Mulan, which I didn't see, but I heard was just woke nonsense anyway. So they'll use Muslim slaves to film woke nonsense and then, lecture Florida about being homophobic while they edit out a gay kiss as they sell to China. So people have kind of seen this, and it's been exposed enough that there's people who are starting to say, okay, I'm out. F you, because again, this is market saturation. So with the increased competition, you don't need a Disney Plus subscription to be, entertained or whatever. I guess it might be harder for people with young kids who are like, okay, let me just put on Beauty and the Beast or whatever, the original one, and we'll shut the kids up for 2 hours. I get it. But there's enough competition in the marketplace that you're not distinguishing yourself. If everyone's trying to push woke nonsense from Amazon Prime, woke, Netflix, Disney, well, you're not distinguishing yourself from the competition in any way. You're alienating half the consumer base. Woke people don't actually support financially woke things. They just kind of expect it. And, it's which of these streaming services will do the heterodox thing. And you know what? Say, the next time I buy one of Daniel's favorite properties, like the Wheel of Time, we're not going to try and take the themes of there are two genders, which is a central tenet of the Wheel of Time. And then the Amazon can't even say that there are two. It's a crazy thing. Right. And just doing nonsense there with a property that people like me love. So whichever one can do Lord of the Rings without trying to inject modern radical politics into it, will have lots of success, and you'll see it shoot up. So if you have Netflix, there's a few major properties that are unowned right now. You can call me Netflix. I'll tell you which ones to buy, and just don't mess them up. Just don't inject your politics into them. They're not right-wing things. They're not left-wing things. Just do a good story. You'll get you can have the next Game of Thrones, and you'll make money. And just don't inject woke politics into it. You don't need to be conservative. You just need to not appeal to a tiny fringe of lunatic left-wingers who won't even come into your aid anyway. They'll just tweet at you mean things if you don't, just ignore them.
It's
So,
part of their nature, though.
yeah.
Daniel Boardman joining us on Saga 960 as we are also streaming this live. Okay, so here's a tweet from Elon Musk. A social media platform's policies are good if the most 10%, extreme 10% on the left and right are equally unhappy. So here he is weighing into what makes a good social media platform. You got to tick off people on both sides, extreme or otherwise. And so to me, this is another indication that this guy is looking at Twitter and going, okay, how can I remake this thing in a way that's more free and more open to everybody?
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're seeing like the panic. I mean, there's talk of Twitter taking the poison pill to avoid Elon Musk getting a hold of them. But this is sort of, it's interesting. So the people in control of Twitter, they're not so much like woke lefties, or I'm sure there are some woke leftists there, but the real people who want this control and you're seeing this marriage between the radical woke anti-free speech, everyone should be transgender people, and wealthy crown prince, Saudi Arabian prince, BlackRock, and all those, Vanguard, BlackRock, Saudi princes, all of them, they want this censorship and they want this woke left nonsense because it's a great way to bludgeon criticism of anything and just call things racist and then you can sweep it under the rug. So it makes sense for Saudi Arabia why they wouldn't want an open free speech platform, because they don't want people criticizing, anything to do with Islam, anything to do with the royal family, anything to do with, how they're conducting the war in Yemen, all of that type of stuff. And then, for Vanguard, BlackRock, all this, they don't want people. I mean, you're partnering with Andy Lee. So Andy Lee's a perfect example of all of this. So, Andy Lee is doing pretty great work exposing the Trudeau Foundation's connections to China and all these major corporations dealing with the CCP and international shenanigans. But, if you just have this culture where everything is racist, you can say, oh, well, Andy Lee's dangerous because her tweets are racist. There's nothing in them. You can't identify any of it. But if you're just in this mode of censorship where you can lump Andy Lee in with like Nick Fuentes or something, well, then it just gets lost in the churn. And you have this culture of censorship and this closed algorithm where no one can really see what's going on. So it lets you say, okay, there's crazy people like Nick Fuentes and, Milo Yiannopoulos said crazy things a few years ago. Okay, so they're a bit outlandish. And, Alex Jones is talking about, pedophiles here, pedophiles there, whatever, right? So you have these people and people go, okay, I guess you did say this about Sandy Hook, probably fine. Right, but then you just throw the Andy Lees of the world in with there, who are actually doing good work, gaining traction, exposing some real corruption, and you can throw them out. So you're seeing this marriage between this anti-capitalist, everything must be, we need a transgender Marxist to run the country, far left, capitalism bad, their marriage between Vanguard, BlackRock, the Saudi royal family, and these woke idiots. And
all right, let's talk about the people who work at Twitter, though. Speaking of woke idiots, okay, so here's a story in the New York Post. Twitter employees slam a-hole Elon Musk, ask whether he's manipulating the stock. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess in a way he is, by making an offer that's whatever, 20 or 30% higher than what the stock was trading at. And so I guess through what he's doing in a weird way, he is, I guess. But he's also saying that, by the way, if you don't go for this, then, I'm out. He said that. He also said in a TED Talk that he's got a plan B. But I guess if he decides to dump all those shares, well, the stock goes back down. It's going to tumble. It's going to fall faster than Netflix did today. And so what do you think of that? I mean, why would you want to alienate a guy like Musk if you're an employee of Twitter, knowing full well that he could be your boss?
Well, I think these are the ideologues, right? So I think there's enough people in Twitter who are like, okay, Elon Musk, whatever. I'm kind of fed up with this culture. But, the problem with this, I don't know who the diversity, equity, inclusion officer at Twitter is, but they probably have a somewhat quasi-militant following within the company. So there always are going to be people in San Francisco who will say, oh, Elon Musk is terrible because he went on Joe Rogan and smoked a blunt and said free speech is good. Whereas you point out his tweet, he said, well, I want 10% I want the craziest 10% of the right wing to be unhappy with what I'm doing, which is good, but it is strange that you would go off on Elon Musk. And I think these are the people who don't want to relinquish power, because to the radical left, all of life is about power and privilege and power dynamics. So they don't want to relinquish power over Twitter, where they have the power to, they see, change the world, right? If they're keeping the big bad ideas away from people, they're saving lives. They're protecting the BIPOCs and the ABCB EFG TQ plus people, and that's their goal in life. So they see correctly that Elon Musk is a threat to their culture of ideological homogeneity and censorship. So they lash out against that. I do think there's a good amount of people on Twitter who would be like, yeah, I'd rather Elon Musk as a boss, because then I don't have to worry about these nonsense, and I could just code or program. He'd be open source, and I could just do my job without having to have a diversity officer breathing down my neck for everything I say. So I think you're always going to find it's like the Disney walkout. When Disney had like hundreds of thousands of employees, and I think we talked about this, 20 employees walked out, and there were more media members filming the walked out Disney employees than Disney employees who walked out. So I just think this is another case of this inside Twitter, where you have some fringe lefties in there, and they're going to do what they're going to do. This is any company you can find someone with purple hair to scream about anything. And I think you're just seeing that now at what is the New York Post or whatever whatever mainstream media outlet wants to cover it.
Daniel Boardman joining us on Saga 960. I mean, obviously, I think you're rooting for Elon Musk.
Yeah.
Have you noticed any change in Twitter lately? I'm throwing this out here. All of a sudden, I'm not being shadow banned, and I don't know. Maybe I'm reading something into this that's not really there.
Maybe you're just
years,
on a roll.
But for years, I've been shadow banned. I'll add a few followers, and then the next day I'll lose 500. I mean, I don't even have that many. But I don't know. Do you think that Twitter's culture now is almost like, okay, fair enough. We get it now, Elon. We'll back off on the censorship. We'll back off on the deplatforming. We'll back off on this neo-fascist type of draconian restriction on conservative voices. Is it possible that Twitter is coming around now to maybe a different way of thinking as a result of what's going on with Elon and the takeover bid?
I think maybe for a month or so you'll see a bit of a freeze if Elon Musk doesn't get away, because I think it's a bit scared. They don't want to sort of fan the flames. So like they had banned like the Libs of TikTok account. Now
yeah, that's huge. Libs of TikTok.
Libs of TikTok is great. She just got doxxed by Taylor Renz. That's another funny story. But the Babylon Bee was still taken off of there, and they haven't been put back on. My thing is, as soon as Elon Musk acquires Twitter, everyone's getting misgendered. I'm misgendering everyone all the time. That'll be my one sole purpose in life. Even you, even people without the pronouns in the bio. Whatever your pronouns are, I'm doing the opposite. That's just my new Twitter thing. Once Elon Musk gets in charge. But yeah, I think you're starting to see a bit of a freeze on this stuff where they don't want to knock down any of the big popular accounts. Like, had Elon Musk not been putting a spotlight on it right now, you'd probably see them like throw Libs of TikTok off permanently, like they did Babylon Bee. Just kind of, say, okay, well, they were getting too popular at doing what they're doing, so we'll just ban them. People will scream for a week, and then they'll move on to the next thing. But I think with Elon Musk sort of sniffing around, I think they want to sort of pull back on this for like a few weeks anyway. So we'll see. We'll see what Elon Musk is capable to do. I'm also excited for what Plan B is.
What do you think? Is it Peter Thiel? Is he going to be in? Is there another whale waiting there? Is it Joe Rogan? Maybe. Joe's pretty rich now.
That'd be pretty
possible
funny.
that he might get in on it.
But I don't think Joe's not billionaire rich, where like Elon Musk can throw billions at something. I think
very rich.
I think Rogan can
Joe's
throw a million at something, not a billion. I think that those are different swimming pools. The Elon Musk pool and the Joe Rogan pool.
Well, maybe so, but I think Joe's still living off his Fear Factor money. That's so,
he got $100 million.
He's made a lot of money since then.
I think that's the new thing.
Well, I for one am rooting big time for Elon. I would love to see him take this company private, and I also think, and I was talking to Georgianne Burke about this. This guy thinks 5-6 chess moves ahead of everybody. He knew this was going to happen. He knew all these woke morons at Twitter were going to try and stop him. He knew that the left was going to freak out. And, while I got you on the line, speaking of freak out, this decision south of the border to end the mask mandates aboard airplanes, and now Uber coming out and say, all right, fine, no more of that in our cars. And so how does Canada continue, aren't they a little out of step here at this point? You see all these countries saying, okay, enough already with the mask mandates.
I mean,
how does Trudeau continue to insist that these are necessary in Canada?
Like, I mean, if you're Canadian, you're not going to like what I have to say, but it seems like Justin Trudeau is dead set on being the Davy Crocker of COVID restrictions, and the last one shooting out of the Alamo here. It's pretty clear that it's gone. These aren't reasonable, but there's still a large faction in the Canadian establishment that wants to fearmonger over COVID. Whether it's the America's getting rid of COVID restrictions and we're better than the Americans, so we're going to COVID restrict even harder, or whether it's just, who knows? Like, I'm in Toronto and there's still people double masked outside. Their brains are just broken. They're just broken people who just can't think about COVID stuff anymore, and they'll just live in a perpetual state of fear. Okay, and that's fine. But we also have this culture in Canada where we want to drag everyone down into our neuroses with us. My favorite is the mask guy from York University who's tweeting about his astronaut mask on there. But these people always exist in Canada. And we've gone, now that the science is saying, okay, time to ease up. Well, the follow the science mantra has evaporated. It's now just, everyone who disagrees with me is a murderer. So it looks like we're going to be the Alamo of COVID. Even Australia and New Zealand are sort of giving up on their craziness. Who knows? Toronto might be the next Shanghai. Like, just no one could go outside. I don't think we're gonna get that crazy. But I think we're more likely to go Shanghai next month than Florida, and that's a sad thing. But it looks like Canada's just gonna Davy Crocker this thing. We're gonna have COVID restrictions as long as humanly possible, as strong as humanly possible. The Liberals feel like they have until 2025 anyway, so there's no need to give any of this up to sort of curry favor for an election. That's it looks like it's the way, and all the Conservative premiers capitulated on COVID anyway. There was no Ron DeSantis of Canada. Canada's Ron DeSantis doesn't exist, so they kind of seen, okay, we can do whatever we want. We control all the media, so no one's ever going to say anything against us on the television. So the TV will always make people afraid, and the government can use this to grab powers. And Omar Al-Ghabra can get up there, or Justin Trudeau, or Chrysler Freeland, or one of the other COVID fascists, and maybe it'll be Stephen Jabilbiot who says we need COVID lockdowns to save the environment or something. Who knows? We'll always need COVID restrictions for some far left thing. COVID restrictions will help us fight racism. It'll help us fight climate change. Whatever the new thing is. Put a mask on, save a transgender child. It's Canada, so none of this needs to make any sense. We're just going to do it forever.
Well, forever is an awfully long time. They've got to do it, and it's become a political issue, of course. Well, now the Liberals in Ontario heading into the Ontario election, saying no, we got to return to the mandates. And Ford, all of a sudden, having been amongst the most draconian of all the premiers, looks like the moderate. It's like relative to. It's like, how does that even happen? How does Doug Ford look like the moderate here next to these nut jobs in the Liberal and NDP? And so I guess he's got. I mean, what do you do if you're in Ontario looking at who to vote for in the coming election and just want an end to these mandates for good?
I think New Blue Ontario is your only option. It's a new party started by Jim and Belinda Calaharos. Belinda Calaharos has been the only one who voted against Bill 195, which was the original COVID nonsense law. It's, I mean, they're new. They probably not going to form government, but they're polling pretty strong in Kitchener-Waterloo region, which are Jim and Belinda's ridings anyway. So it has been pretty important to keep Belinda in the legislature, as she did stop Bill 67, which was the critical race theory bill in schools. The only way to sort of vote on an anti-lockdown way is New Blue. There's only one party that's actually against the mandates and against the lockdowns. And I've spoken to Jim. I think you've spoken to Jim too, or Richard has. And the New Blue Party is here to stay. It will be here on June 3rd, no matter what. Unlike some other parties where Derek Sloan's party is very likely to go away by mid-June. New Blue looks like it will be here for the long haul, and hopefully we can keep Belinda in the legislature and continue to have at least a voice against the lockdowns that, from all my sources, it looks like fall. We're gonna be allowed out of our houses this summer in Ontario, but from what I'm hearing is they're planning something. We're going back to lockdowns in the fall in Ontario is what I'm hearing, or something in the fall. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it sounds like this fall. Hysteria.
So Toronto's going to be Shanghai.
Yeah.
Come fall. God help us. All right, Daniel. Thank you so much, Dan. Tell us how people can access your content.
If you could spell my name, I have Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all that. And then also the National Telegraph. You can look us up on Facebook, Twitter, or thenationaltelegraph.com, TNT. So yeah, I mean, I write articles there. We do social, it's modern world, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, all the social medias. You can link us at my face to your face on the cloud.
And if you ever end up behind bars because of something you've said, you can call yourself the board man of Alcatraz.
There you go. And that'll probably be this fall.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thanks, Mark. Anytime.
All right, Daniel Boardman. Check out the National Telegraph. Got to take a break. Back with more on News Talk Saga 960. And thank you for tuning into this the Twitter live stream and this broadcast, this transmission. Let's do it again real soon, shall we? Quick break. Back with more on News Talk Saga 960 after this.